The movie opens up in a convenience store in Los Angeles one late night with a small-time drug dealer named Nick trying to decide which coffee flavor to buy. His ex-lover Dallas and his fellow hitman Billy Hill seem to be getting impatient by the dilemma, so they tell him to hurry up. Eventually Nick chooses chocolate macadamia flavor, but to his misfortune the dispenser is empty. He complains to the cashier, but the latter suggests that he just choose some other flavor. Nick reluctantly fills a cup with hazelnut coffee and proceeds to the counter. While paying, he demands for a free cake, but the cashier claims that the free cake is available only for 20 ounces coffee. Their discussion frustrates Dallas, who then grabs her handgun and shoots the annoying cashier dead. Never deny your customer cake. Not long after, they notice a police car approaching the convenience store. As a result, Nick poses as a cashier while Dallas and Billy pretend to be the customers. A police officer walks in to grab a cup of coffee. The group manages to hide the corpse from the officer for the first few moments, but he soon spots blood on the floor. With no options left, they kill the officer as well. Ashamed, they could have bonded over their love for cake. The scene then cuts to Texas, where we are introduced to a man named Casey, an old drug-dealing partner in Nick. They had parted ways several years ago, and Casey has since turned his life around. He is now married to his beautiful wife Christine, and they are looking forward to adopting a child. Early one Thursday morning, Casey receives a call from Nick, who asks if can stay at his place for a few days. Casey does not seem to be comfortable having him in his house, but he eventually agrees when Nick says that he's getting married. Later, while preparing breakfast, Casey tells his wife about Nick coming to stay at their house. Christina is confused as she's never heard Casey talk about his friend before. Despite this, she does not have time to discuss it as she is getting late for work. Before leaving, she informs him that she will be late that night because she has a dinner plan with her boss. She also reminds him about an appointment with Dr. Jarvis from the adoption agency right at 8 o'clock. Nick arrives at Casey's doorstep and the two friends are overjoyed to reunite after such a long time. Nick asks about what he's been doing, to which Casey replies that he's an architect now. Hearing this, Nick is surprised and tells him that he looks boring compared to how he used to be. I'm not boring you, says Casey, is short. While later Nick mentions that he has some errands to run and requests to borrow Casey's car because his own car has a flat tire. Without any hesitation, Casey hands over the car keys and Nick departs. Following this, Casey gets back to his work, but he is unable to focus as he is passing by the guest room. One of Nick's suitcases grabs his attention. He becomes suspicious as it appears to be the same one that they used while dealing drugs. After a while of deliberation, Casey finally decides to open it. His assumption turns out to be true as the suitcase is full of heroin. Enraged, he calls Nick and angrily confronts him for bringing drugs into his home. Casey orders him to pick up his stuff and leave his house immediately. However, Nick claims that he can't do that because he has some unfinished business to take care of. Casey threatens to involve the police and surrender the drugs to them, but Nick does not seem to be affected by this. Fuming with anger, Casey takes the drugs to his kitchen and disposes of them in the garbage unit. At 11:55, Casey hears the doorbell ring, and upon answering it, he sees a pizza delivery boy. Casey asserts that he didn't order any pizza, but the delivery person unexpectedly punches him and holds him at gunpoint. It turns out the delivery boy is a Jamaican Rasta hitman named Ice. Ice asks about the drugs, to which Casey reveals that he has already disposed of them. This prompts Ice to contact his boss, who orders him to eliminate Casey. After hanging up the phone, Ice aims the gun at him, but Casey suggests that they smoke some ganja together before he dies. The Jamaican guy simply can't say no to this proposition because this movie came out in the 90s and stereotypes are rampant, so he agrees. As the two smoke, Ice opens up about himself. He says that he aspires to be a rapper and he's involved in killing business just for the sake of the money. An hour passes by, during which both of them consume a lot of weed. Ice then gets up and tells Casey that it's time. He is about to kill Casey when his cell phone rings. It's from one of his friends who asks him to perform a rap over the phone. Ice hesitantly agrees and proceeds to deliver his rap. Casey takes advantage of this distraction and knocks Ice down, then ties the hitman with duct tape and keeps him in his garage. Shortly after, the doorbell rings one more time. Casey answers it to find Dr. Jarvis waiting outside in his stoned state. Casey hastily clears the remnants of the drugs from the table and sprays air freshener around the room before inviting the doctor inside. It turns out that Dr. Jarvis is here to interview Casey and evaluate if he's fit to adopt a baby. Casey nervously answers the first few questions, but Dr. Jarvis is particularly curious about what Casey did when he lived in Los Angeles. Our guy tries his best to cover up his past as well as his recent encounter with ICE. Midway through the interview, Dallas shows up at Casey's house believing that Nick has left some money. Along with the heroin, Casey tells her that Nick isn't home and asks her to leave, but she barges in anyway thinking that Dallas is Casey's friend. Dr. Jarvis welcomes her and requests to ask her a few questions. The latter promptly agrees and reveals the past life of Casey. She mentions that he was a ruthless drug dealer who is not afraid of anyone. He would kill anyone even if he liked them without a blink of hesitation. After hearing about the drug dealing and murdering past, Dr. Jarvis feels uncomfortable and wants to leave. He obviously is not going to approve Casey for the child adoption. Casey tries his best to stop him, but Dr. Jarvis does not listen and walks away. As soon as he departs, Dallas holds Casey at gunpoint and ties him up to a chair. She then asks about the money that Nick brought with him. Casey claims that he knows nothing about it because he quit this business many years ago. Here it is finally revealed why Casey quit his criminal life. A flashback shows him and Nick in the middle of drug dealing. Things didn't work out as expected, which resulted in the shootout between the two parties. During that, Casey unintentionally killed a woman who was 8 months pregnant. The guilt overwhelmed him, and since then he decided to quit. Not turn himself in or anything, just pretend it didn't happen. Dallas mocks him for his story and intends to wait for Nick to come. Until then she plans to get intimate with him. Casey strictly refuses this, claiming that he is a married man, but Dallas does not care. She undresses herself and forces herself on Casey. In the middle of this assault, BuIIi breaks in and shoots her from behind, splashing blood all over Casey's face. This movie goes hard just like Dallas. BuIIi is also here for the money. He tells Casey that Nick has stolen $2 million from the cops and had it hidden somewhere. Believing that Casey knows where the money is, BuIIi plans to torture him with a saw and to blow torch in revealing the location as he brags about his prowess and technique of cauterization. They hear the police sirens. BuIIi immediately hides his tools and goes to check. In the meantime, Casey loosens the duct tape around his wrists and grabs a frying pan before he sits back down in the same position. BuIIi comes back and tells him that the police came to raid the house next door. He again picks up his torture tools and notices the duct tape on the floor. However, before he can do anything, Casey smacks him with the frying pan several times, and until he gets knocked out. Casey then grabs a handgun and aims at BuIIi's head, but he remembers that he is not the same person anymore. As a result, he takes him to the garage and ties him up inside, just like ice. A short while later, Nick calls Casey from a pay phone and confides that things didn't work out as he anticipated. He apologizes to Casey for everything and admits that he had stolen the heroin and money from the police. Nick's breaking voice makes Casey sense that something is wrong. He asks about the matter, but Nick simply replies that he's leaving the country and bids goodbye. As they hang up the phone, it is revealed that Nick has been shot and is dying from blood loss. Following this, Casey cleans himself up as well as his entirely messed up and blood-covered house. At 5 a.m., corrupt cop named Cl4pping arrives at the house with a bag in his hand. It turns out that Cl4pping is the same person from whom Nick stole the money. Upon entering, Cl4pping reveals the content inside the bag: NYX's severed head. Much like Dallas and BuIIi, Cl4pping also asks the same question about the money's whereabouts, but Casey still has the same answer, that he has no idea about it. The cop says that he believes him, but he expects Casey to know where his friend would have hidden the money. He then presents Casey with an ultimatum: if he can find the money by 7:00 p.m. he will erase all the records of the Thursday incident. Basically, he is blackmailing Casey about the dead body and 2 of the captives in his garage, whom he is well aware of. Cl4pping asks where he has hidden the captives, and Casey leads him to the garage. The cop takes no time in mercilessly shooting the hanging people to death. He then tells Casey to throw them out as it's garbage day. Once the cop leaves, Casey continues to clean the house. As per Ciro's suggestion, he mutilates the dead bodies and disposes of them in the trash can outside. While returning back to his house, he notices Nick's car that is parked outside. He suddenly remembers about the flat tire that Nick was talking about earlier. Casey proceeds to check his car and finds the money in the spare tire. In addition, he also finds a small gift box left by Nick as he was unable to attend Casey's wedding. Upon opening it, he finds 2 watches, one for Christine and the other for himself. In the aftermath, Casey takes his phone and calls his boss, informing him that the heroin is set to be auctioned off at his home at 7:00 p.m., thereby setting a trap between the Jamaican gang and Cl4pping's corrupt cop. Meanwhile, Casey grabs the suitcase full of money, hops into Dallas's Lumbo and heads away to pick up his wife at 7 p.m. The Jamaican gang and Ciro's corrupt cops meet at Casey's residence and they end up shooting each other just as Casey had orchestrated. On the other hand, Casey meets his wife at the airport. Christine is surprised to see him there and asks what he's doing. Casey answers that he's leaving for France and he wants her to come with him. Hearing this, Christine understands that he's gotten himself into trouble. She doesn't know what to do because she has a career here, but she also loves Casey. Believing that she is not coming with him, he decides to leave alone, but Christine stops him in the nick of time and shares her decision to accompany him. She asks about the details of the matter and Casey responds that he'll tell her everything on the way. And thus Casey gets a happy ending that he absolutely in no way deserves. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.